short background on me, I was a senior level consultant for RGA, consulting for Google out in Mountain View, California. So I was overseeing their product ecosystem, helping them strategically align products and move their business forward. I saw a lot of really great things out there, a lot of really, really cool technologies, but also being in the industry, having to manage not only Google, but knowing what's going on in the industry at large. You see a lot of things where you're like, maybe we should reconsider this. Maybe we should pump the brakes a bit. And so, yeah, I left last June due to ethical concerns about what's happening in the Valley at large, not just Google. And I have started my own nonprofit called Design Good. What this is I'm on a mission to, one, help inform the general public about what's going on, raise awareness about these issues in a way that they can speak about, right? These are issues that have been overcomplexified and need to be talked about by the public, so I'm bringing that conversation to light. And two, to give designers, engineers, technical people, the tools, knowledge, and resources to accelerate the good that we need to be created. Can I get a hand raise real quick? How many of you in the room are designers? Okay, good chunk. And engineers or developers, and then other. Okay, so cool. So we got a lot of technical in the room. That's cool. So what I'm first writing about is a book called Automating Humanity. It's the beginnings of this platform that I'm creating for people, and it will walk through a lot of what these guys walked through in the beginning and how we got in that position and where it could go in the future. And then we'll talk through solutions on how we improve it, which is what we're going to talk about right now. First step in this that we need to talk about, that most people are really concerned about and want to talk about, but don't know how, is how to recognize data monopolies. Right? These are new business models. Right? They're not new in the history of the world, but they are relatively new in the way that they're interacting with us and the way that they are manipulating us. Right? And the attention marketplace that we now exist in is something we've never really considered before, or had to. And so how do we consider monopolies in the attention economy? First, we have to recognize that these are the largest organizations in the history of the world, largest empires ever, right? This is larger than Catholicism, larger than Hinduism, or the British Empire, right? This is a little shocking to some people because these tools are things that we just see on our screen. It's an individual experience. But what we don't realize is they are in everything across the world, right? Also, these technology revolutions we're seeing right now are happening faster than anything we've seen come before, right? I'm not actually scared of machines coming over and killing everyone. I'll tell you that right now. There's a lot of that talk. But I am concerned about the speed at which everything's moving and not being able to adapt on time. I think that that's very reasonable for people to be concerned about. Also, we have to consider that their stock prices are going through the roof. Right? The average company would be happy with 4 to 6% returns, and they're seeing 40 to 60% each year. Okay? When this happens, when growth like this happens, typically that means that there is something either the market doesn't understand or that is illegal, or a combination of both. Right? A little laughter, but also there's an issue here, right? So we need to talk about it. And that's why we talk about antitrust. Antitrust, for those of you who don't know, there's 3 pillars to it. One is keeping prices reasonable. 2 is allowing free trade of goods, or in this case, data. And 3rd is allowing freedom of competition, not destroying competition. I start off with lowering prices because typically in antitrust law, if companies are lowering prices, then the regulators will allow them to slide. They'll allow them to say, okay, you can destroy competition, you can eliminate free trade, because the price is what's best for the market. They're struggling with price here in the modern terms because we no longer pay in monetary terms, right? In the attention marketplace, we pay with our attention. We've taken cost and put it at 0, and now our attention is skyrocketing. Okay? So we can think about it like this. The baseline of their business models are get more attention, turn it into more data, which then turns into more money. And if we look at this and we see attention as a currency, attention right now is an illegitimate and corrupted currency. It has no set value. It's not like gasoline where we say, we pay $2.75 a gallon, or a euro, a $20 euro that we can pass around. It's 20 for all of us, right? It has a value that is not set. It also is corrupted in the sense that it is damaging our population, both psychologically and physically. Okay, so what we're seeing is taking an illegitimate, corrupted currency, washing it through a legitimate business model of data brokering and product creation, and turning it into legitimate cash. And typically that process in the United States is called money laundering. Right? Okay. So I'm not out here to point a crime at these companies, but to say there is some trouble in the fact that they can manipulate that data to the best of their bottom line. That's what we're seeing right now. That's why their stock prices look like this. the fear of mine that I saw being in the Valley is that when this happens, it allows for corruption to happen very easily. What's happened is they've complexified the issues, like I said, beyond anything that the general public is capable of keeping up with. And that allows them to do that on the back end without anyone knowing. The last time that happened was in the financial market in the early 2000s. And that compounding effects of corruption led to the largest market crash in the world that we've seen since the Great Depression. Right? These companies, as we just saw, are larger than anything that has come before. So we have to start to talk about this. And even if this was a legitimate currency, what we also have to see here is that as they create addictive interactions and driving intentional currency through the roof, they are actively and intentionally price gouging in the attentional economy. Right? So that's checkbox number one that I've been working on with regulators is, yes, they have lowered the monetary price, right? But they are pushing the attentional price through the roof. So they're actually price gouging right now. And that's a concept that they haven't quite wrapped their minds around, but it's something that we need to checkbox on the antitrust, right? There's number one. Number two is elimination of free trade. This one's a little harder to see, but this comes in the fact of, Facebook. You can't really share your data from Facebook to Twitter, right? We can't share posts very easily from Facebook to Twitter or any other platform, right? As designers, we all know we make seamless digital ecosystems. That's the marketing language. But what we are doing is we are creating ecosystems that withhold data. Right? That's really what it is, making it more difficult to freely trade data. We see this in terms of YouTube not being allowed to play on Fire TV devices and Amazon firing back and saying, okay, well, we're not going to sell Nest thermostats, right? These are petty to most consumers, but we all know that this is a strategic move to keep data within their ecosystems, right? So there's checkbox number two. And lastly, number three, destruction of competition. We all kind of have a running joke in startup world, oh yeah, I'm just building to get acquired, right? But that is because we are to the point where you can't build your own company, right? Comparison I show is Google Home versus Amazon Alexa. These two were put in test to compare each other last year, asked 3,000 plus questions, in which Google Home outperformed Alexa by 6 times. And that's a lot, right? That's 6 times. And at the time, Amazon owned 70% of the market and had been around 2 years longer. These are behemoths that are fighting, and Google just smashed them. How is any small or medium-sized company ever supposed to keep up? Right? And that's the point. 53% of startups in the Valley believe that it is their goal to get acquired, and only 16% believe they stand a chance in an IPO. So my proof here is that we have hit the point where we need to implement monopoly antitrust law or something along those lines. That's what I'm trying to speak to people about. It is a matter of public safety that we do this, and that gets the conversation going, right? After that, next steps. We have to talk about social media as news. This is something that we're seeing right now with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and all the damage being done, right? All the fake news that's coming out. First, the steps to clean this up. We need to get rid of bot populations. Bots can really, really easily manipulate what's going on the internet. More than 52% of traffic on the internet, though, is bots. It's something people don't really know. Facebook claims 2.1 billion users, but actually, if you think about the numbers, it's probably a little less than 1 million. Not that that's not a lot of people, but still, just think about that. Google search is a bot. Twitter's algorithm is a bot. Facebook's algorithm is a bot. The internet would not be manageable without bots. But what we need to do is eliminate the bad bots, right? So let's keep the good ones around, help them manage things, help them police the internet, do those things, right? Because there's no set of human beings who are going to be able to wrap around the entire internet and police it. We will need automation to help us with those things. But it's about adding some friction into the system and reducing those bot populations. And so how do we do that? Some people think that we need stricter verification processes. We need social media to have our social security numbers and identify us that way. Yeah. Thank you. One, there's that, right? There's no. We definitely shouldn't. Just no. But two, consider that social security numbers are things that change across countries. So it's not a scalable option. It's going to take a lot of nuances, and it's very difficult. Also, we don't trust them with data we have now. Why would we want to give them more intimate information, right? That's a security threat to them as well. Next, people are talking about biometrics and registering so that we can sign up and log in with those. And sure, they may be a little bit smoother, right, than a password and easier to keep track of than a password. But these are just as easy to hack if you get the right people hacking at them. Eye scanners have been hacked. Fingerprints have been hacked. Facial recognition has been hacked. And once you lose that, you can't reset that, like your password. Right? You can't just scrape off your thumb. So biometrics is not really the answer either, right? So now we're like, shit, where are we going? My conclusion is that we need to root it back in reality, actually. We need to add some friction by getting back in the real world. And actually, one of Google's products does this really well. How many of you have heard of Google My Business? Yeah, oh, yeah, a few. That's awesome. Okay, I expected 0. But Google My Business is, the cards that you get on maps when you look something up and it shows you a card of a business. That's Google My Business. Most people don't ever actually apply for it, but you can. And they have one of the strictest verification processes on the web. Can anyone guess, or is anyone willing to guess how they do it? Nice, yeah. There you go. They send you a postcard in the mail. Do you know how long it takes people to register for Google My Business on average? 3 to 6 months.
Jesus Christ.
Why? Because they get a letter in the mail, they throw it away, right? But at least it's not a bot. At least we don't have more bots spamming and like just growing and growing, right? So if we add some friction, we just slow it down a little bit and root this in reality in different ways, I believe we can make the internet safer and verify easier. You don't have a mailing address, so you can call in, right? Or something. We figured out most of the world has a cell phone at this point. Next, increase verification, all right? Because it's easy to get verified on Twitter, on social media, wherever it is nowadays. It's something where a lot of it has to do with like your follower count, which can super easily be gamed, right? So one of the things that Larry Page and Sergey Brin said in their PhD thesis in the 90s was that the biggest danger to the web was going to be the frictionless experience where anyone can post anything at any time with no restrictions. Unlike traditional media where, you'd have to buy a printing press or you'd have to have a broadcast station or things like that, right? We had to put some money in the game. We had to have some risk to it, and so it required that we did some work. Now anyone can just be an expert by clicking their phone and making a blog, doing whatever they want. So it's not about eliminating that, right? That's what these groups are trying to do now. They're putting on algorithms that are censoring people, populations at large, on both sides. And if they head down that route, they're going to get in a lot of trouble because they will become censoring organizations. Instead, we could think of a way that we can add friction to the process by just updating the verification process. Maybe we have a system where we have regular experts, similar to what we have now. We have verified experts. Then maybe we have local experts, national experts, worldwide experts, different levels of this. And in order to reach those levels, you go through a process where you have to actually work with the company. So maybe I have to take a test through Facebook that teaches me about the ethics of influencing a global population, right? I can't just be some kid who came up and had some really stupid content go viral a few times and became an expert, right? I actually have to take some classes, just like journalists had to. Or if I want to work in the medical field, I have to take some ethics classes the same way that medical people might. And that's associated with the system, right? So that their verification is, again, rooted in reality, and they have some experience and some reason to have more influence. Next, higher information respondents. So this is something, if you watched the Zuckerberg hearing, you probably saw something about him saying, oh, we're going to hire 20,000 more people to check flag posts, right? Anyone see that part, right? How many of you feel good about that number, 20,000 more people helping? Not too many. That's good, because what you can think of these people as is similar to emergency respondents, right? And if you look at the way that emergency respondents go out through the world, consider that in New York alone, there are 15,000 emergency respondents for 9 million people, and they struggle to respond to all those people. When Mark Zuckerberg said, oh, we're going to get 20,000 for 2.1 billion, that is 30% more people for 230 times the amount of people, right? There's an inherent problem there. Their inboxes look like this, okay? There's no keeping up. We need more people in the system, right? You can also think of them maybe as like waste management people of the world. You can also think of them as the editors on the newspaper. Information respondents could be a job that helps us bridge the gap that is going to come with automation. People who have an expertise can then become information respondents and help clean up the information on the web. Now again, that doesn't mean censoring, right? And that doesn't mean that we stop everything. But these algorithms are not capable of doing them by themselves at this point. Algorithms are great at grabbing a whole bunch of stuff and saying, hey, you might want to look at this. And then we need humans to actually look at it individually. That's why we need more humans, and it would help us create jobs. Actually, there's a system that's working with DARPA right now, or DARPA is creating a system, called CHESS, and it has a computer-human expert synthesis. It has something to do with, I don't know the full name right now, I have it in my book, sorry. But what it is it's a system where they have said, our algorithms are very good, but they're not at the point where they're able to recognize the nuances, especially in language, that humans can. And so we need more humans in the system. So if DARPA is doing it, there's no reason why Facebook and Google and all these shouldn't at least consider it, right? Next, demand transparency. So this goes back to some of the stuff they've been talking about all day. But we do have a reason, or we do have a right to know how this stuff is working. There were some releases at Google I/O about how they're going to have some more transparent algorithms, and that's good. They are taking steps. These companies all are taking steps, and they have been taking steps for a while. The difference is that they're taking steps only after the consumers set their world on fire. Right? That needs to change. And part of the GDPR does talk about transparency. There is part of that is it's a little flimsy right now. It's in there, but it needs to be more well-defined. Something I'm talking about is I think we should have a right to control our algorithms. What if they gave us the ability to say, okay, you're going to have data point number one. This data point's being used for this reason. And by increasing the weight of this variable, you're capable of seeing this more often or that more often. Right? This should be in legislation. Because there are some things that these companies will do as soon as the consumers demand it. There are others that are a matter of public safety and human rights, and they should be put into legislation. Stuff like this. Next, implement fair data and privacy standards. So this, again, is something that they've walked through. But we need to have more contextual breakdowns of data and privacy aggregation. So if they're going to say, okay, we need access to this data point for this device purpose, we're going to use it for this purpose specifically. Now, this could become a really long list. It could, but it should. It shouldn't just be a broad one statement that says, we're just going to collect this and we'd like to use it. Are you cool with that? Right? If they have more than one, maybe they tab it off into multiple tasks and they give you different reasons for it. Right? So these are more complex, multi-point versions of them. Right? Allows you to opt in and opt out of them individually. Each of uses individually. Next, they also should have a data control center, which we saw. Right? They're beginning to get there, but it's still to the point where it's just a lot of information. How do we make this better designed? So imagine if you had, okay, we're using data point one for this, this, and this. You can switch it off and on. These are the companies that are also getting this data point, and here's how they're using it. Just right there for you to just get into and dive into really easily. They do, like I said, they have access to this stuff right now, but it is not what we are calling now usable privacy. It is just, okay, here's privacy access. But let's actually consider the user experience here and make it enjoyable and easy for people to understand, not just, right, here's everything at once. Also data sharing controls. So you can, just like we have app notifications on our phone, we can control where we want to get these from. If you want to dive into each company specifically, you can get into more intimate data points and control it from one center as opposed to scattered all throughout our data universe. Next, update consumer privacy and consumer safety standards. Sorry. Part of this comes into, one, we need to define crimes for bots. What is a bot crime? What is not? There's all this mystic talk about how algorithms are data-driven and they're unbiased and blah, blah, blah. An algorithm was created by a human at the end of the day, okay? Especially like Zuckerberg saying we're going to use algorithms to wrangle this up. What they're really saying is, instead of hiring a bunch of people and employing people and spreading the wealth, we actually just want to concentrate that wealth and have a small handful of people make these algorithms, right? And there are also other ways that kind of same mindset can be manipulated to cause crimes in the world. Consider even just simple things like we have what are called Grinch bots that are now buying up all certain Christmas presents in order to make it terrible for little kids who their parents can't afford Christmas presents, right? There's like simple things like that all the way to like military crimes, right? That can happen with this stuff. And we need to start talking about what those may be, because at the end of the day, there's a human that it all came from, and it is just an extension of them. I also talked through how we need to outlaw dark data or dark design patterns, right? Which we were talking about earlier a little bit. But right now, there's a lot of this slot machine effect on these interactions, and that's intentional. That's to get you addicted. That is to create FOMO, right? These things should be eliminated. Everything, red notifications to forced opt-in, things, all of these different design patterns should be things that we consider modern consumer protection standards. Right? Again, this is a new world. This is a new economy that we're working in. But regulators need to be well aware of these things. And the last point I talk about is that, we can create data privacy standards for people. We can give them that whole access to everything. We can outlaw some of the dark data or design patterns. But at the end of the day, if no one knows what's going on, it doesn't really matter. putting good data and privacy controls on these applications is like putting a nutrition label on a Snickers and expecting it not to be fattening. It's just not going to happen. So the last step in this, I think we also need to have legislation that says these companies should be forced to pay for consumer education, the same way that big tobacco has to inform consumers about the tobacco dangers, right? I don't think there's any reasonable way they shouldn't be able to, right? So that comes into improved education. We're going to need students of STEM work, STEM background, but also consider that the things that machines can't do and won't be able to do for a long time are creative, empathetic, and non-routine. We need more humanities in the schools. We need to avoid standardization as much. Start to get back to the human root, because there are a lot of things that can be automated and will be automated. And I think they'll bring a lot of benefits too. I'm not cynical about this stuff. I do want this stuff to happen. I just want it to happen safely. And part of that is in changing our education system so that, one, we have data literate citizens, but two, we have citizens who can do things machines can't, right? 7 is offer equal opportunity by design, right? In the Valley, it's about 70-80% white dudes from MIT, Stanford, Harvard, wherever. I am well aware that I'm a white dude standing up here. I understand that. But we have to, I think all of us standing up on stage have a responsibility to talk about these issues, right? Regardless of our background. And this is an issue of it's responsibility, right? Because right at this point, we're automating different sections of the world. We are doing things that are essentially corralling people into behaviors we believe are right as the creators of these systems, right? Any of us, you may not be working on Google, you may not be working on Twitter, whatever. You're building a platform that is affecting people's lives, and as a designer or an engineer, you are essentially the governor to the modern governing system, right? And your constituents of users. And we have a responsibility to represent them honestly. Something I tell people is that, the American Revolution was fought for no taxation without representation, right? The modern fight should be no implementation without representation. Across the data sets that we are creating, that are training these systems, across the models that are replicating different parts of society, and across the workforce that is building these systems, right? This will be more important now than ever. And it's something that I hope we can all grasp on, is easily yell at them. Discover and accelerate emerging markets. So as Phil was saying, I've been traveling quite a bit. I've been traveling all across the world, down in South America, all throughout Europe. I'm going to Australia later in the fall, and all throughout the States. I'm hoping to help accelerate communities around the world, to let them know what's happening and help them see where the future is headed. I think that that's very important, because these systems aren't going to slow down anytime soon. And not that they, there's a balance there, right? But I think the important part of it is that we help accelerate other communities through this. Right now, we're seeing a lot of people who are scared of this, rightfully so, and they are pulling the emergency switch, hoping, like a lot of people did in the States, to make America great again, right? We didn't bring back coal mining jobs, and we're not going to. So how do we help those people move forward through this transition that will, unfortunately, be kind of painful? Right? I think that that's a responsibility we have as technical workers. Maybe you don't have to dive into it as deep as I am. But I think, if someone's asking you about what you're doing, it would be responsible of you to help them understand it. Just simple steps of all of us working together will make a better future. There's great things happening around the world. This is InFarm in Berlin. They're creating smart farming. You have this is a place where I'm from in Nebraska. It's called Huddle. They're doing sports analysis. Nebraska is the middle of the United States. It is a bunch of farmland. People know nothing about the state. This is a $500 million company sitting there, right? They started from the ground up with not a lot of investment money. They just made it happen. Same within Brazil. They're having a new bank. They're innovating in the bank space, the financial tech space. There are great things happening around the world, but we need to decentralize the concentration of wealth and power that is sitting in the Valley, in New York City, and parts of London too, right? And I think that that's huge for all of us to recognize and help others too. Don't be afraid if someone emails you to respond, right? Don't think you're too good for that. Lastly is reintroduce stability. So this comes down to, right, we have the gig economy, which is employing people and really low quality work and labor. They don't have benefits. They're getting tossed around. We have automation that's completely disrupting people's careers and wiping them out. We need to reintroduce some stability into the world. That comes through part of what I talked with, where we could create jobs through different ways that people haven't thought of before. But also I think that we need to create a data collection tax and processing tax. So right now we're seeing that 82% of the wealth is in the top 1%. I'm sure most of you have seen that report. And if you think about attentional currency, right, what we've kind of been talking about this whole time, attentional wealth and how it aggregates, you can see that these companies, they've inverse capitalism. Okay? You look at traditional work and traditional production, the number of employees they had, the more employees they had, the more they could produce. With tech work, this is global, right? You see Alibaba, Tencent, this isn't just the United States. They reach a certain point where actually humans become gum in the system. So we need to figure out a way to reverse that or at least change it. Right? And that's where I talk through, okay, 82% of the wealth in the top 1%, look at the long tail of the internet. It's a very good reflection of what that is, right? 95% of all search traffic goes to the first page, Google search. 76% goes to the top 5 results. This is the same across all platforms, right? So going back to that attentional currency, attentional wealth, when you direct that attention at certain businesses, we don't need to be the local shop anymore, right? It used to be like, oh, it's a corner store, that's where I'm going to go. Then we had distribution. It allowed people to ship across the world, right? Then we had product, was the best product, who has the best advertising. Now it is who's best at manipulating attentional currency and getting it directed at them. And that's why we're seeing this wealth. So, like I said, I think we need to create a data collection and processing tax. This is something I would like to see in legislation. Right? These companies move their operations from the United States to other parts of Europe where tax laws are lax. It's hard to tax them and really get that money put into economies. If you have a data collection and processing tax that spans the globe, they can't do anything about it. They have to pay that tax. You're going to take that money and redistribute it to local economies and do things that will help us build our infrastructure back up, create new jobs, bring life back to the people that we are now seeing are unstable across the world. Right? So last part here, I bring up these topics not to like light people's hair on fire, right? I bring this up to just show you like what's happening and hopefully have conversations about how we make it better. There's a lot of fear mongering in the world right now, and it's good that we're talking about those things, but I would hope to see that more of us work to find solutions. And we are all part of that. So my challenge to you is, you've heard this stuff, this is just the beginnings. I have a lot more we could talk for hours. But my challenge to you is like, let's work to create a better future. Let's not keep complaining about it. Let's not keep giving people a reason to light our worlds on fire. Everyone's world's on fire right now. Let's work together and make something really awesome and help everything be better. That's it.